Hey y'all, thank you for joining us for another Good News Bay podcast. It is that place where we make Bay County brighter one conversation at a time. We are thrilled that you've joined us today. We're excited to have another very special guest in Sheriff Tommy Ford. And he's been kind enough to grace us with some time and to share some positive things that are happening. I'm excited about it, him being a person that's been a friend for a while, but also one who has done an awful lot to help keep Bay County rolling through some difficult times that we've had these last several years. Crazy times, really.
It has been.
And I want to just start with a little bit of background on you. You're from Port St. Joe.
I am.
And so you're a local Northwest Florida guy. Saw that you, like me, did some time at Sanspur Tech, which is Gulf Coast College, then West Florida, which is also, I'm alumni there as well.
Go Argo.
Yeah, absolutely. Go Shells. Or I think now we're Knights. We actually have a football team,
really?
they say.
Okay.
And a national championship.
Actually, they did very well last
They
year.
did. But I still like to aggravate those that are current there and say go Shells.
That's right.
Your degree was in finance and accounting,
Yes. Yep.
which I think is important to point out. We'll come back to that later. But I'm curious, like law enforcement wise, I guess I shouldn't even be getting into the questions here, but you worked for a while on the as a special agent with the State Department of Law Enforcement, right?
Right.
And then it was out of that you came back to work at the Sheriff's Department for a number of years, and you were kind of the number two alongside Frank McKeithen for a while.
Yes, sir.
And then as he retired, you were appointed by the governor at the time and have now been serving as sheriff since 2017. Is that right?
August of 2016.
August 2016, and then you started a 4-year term in 17.
Yes, sir.
Which is phenomenal because that means you did good in the time that you had, and they rolled you right over.
Started another one in January. So
Yep.
I've been blessed for sure.
You're married.
I am.
We don't get to talk about that a lot. A lot of different places, they always put you on television and say, tell us who died, tell us who got caught, but they don't ever say, tell us about your wife.
Right.
Tell me about your wife.
She's a wonderful lady in my rock. She's really a special person. She actually is a Bay County native. Her parents, her father was Judge Eleanor, which was a longtime county court judge here, and she's just a real sweetheart. She works as a legal assistant and has for many years. And when I go home, that's my sanctuary. And she's
Tell us her first name.
Kathy.
And Kathy likes to scrapbook a little bit, doesn't she?
She has evolved from scrapbooking to stamping. She makes her own cards now, and I like
Oh,
to joke
my
with
word.
her that I used to pay $4.99 for cards at Hallmark, but now with all the supplies and the room that's dedicated to it and the equipment, I think I've got cards down to about $79 a piece.
You also, we were talking about this on the way kind of down the hallway to the studio. You have a daughter.
Yep.
Tell us her name.
Jessica.
And Jessica has grown up since we talked last because
Yeah.
she's not a teenager anymore. She graduated college, didn't she?
Just graduated from FSU a month or two ago. We're very proud of her.
Is she in Tallahassee?
She is. Mm-hmm.
And is she going to be staying in Tallahassee, or do we know?
I think so. She's got a boyfriend over there, nice kid, and I don't think she's going to be coming back anytime soon. But she may surprise us, especially when the bills start rolling in.
That's good. Well, she's still close enough you can get over there in a day for lunch or what have you, which is cool. Well, listen, you and I first met honestly as a result. We have a number of guys in our church and gals that are law enforcement. But back during the early days of spring break, when that was all hot and heavy, I had the opportunity to do a ride along, and I split the evening with you and Sheriff McKeithen at the time. And I think me and the sweet lady off Fox News were swapping back and forth. But in the process of all that, it was such a treat to see how all that goes.
You and I actually partied at Spinnaker together, didn't
we? We partied at Spinnaker, the first and only time ever. You did bring that up, didn't you? I literally had never been in the place and had been in your car about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think I met you about 6 o'clock and was trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? Do I just follow you? And the radio call came that there was a guy with a gun behind Spinnaker.
Yeah.
And I said, what do I do? You said, follow me. And so we ran through Spinnaker. You ran out on the back deck. You stood me by the bouncer on the back side.
Right.
And y'all went and found the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
That was eye-opening for me as a person with no background in law enforcement, because when you got him out in the parking lot, it turned out that he literally was waving a gun at a group of folks, and they were, I don't know if you've ever seen it, I mean, you have, but like if you've ever seen a group of fish out in the Gulf, and you just got this big school of fish, and then you got the big fish that comes in, and when he does, the whole school moves. Well, every time this guy would wave the gun, the entire group of people would go running like a school of fish. Well, y'all got him out front, and it turned out that it looked just like an automatic pistol. I don't know if you remember one incident over the other. I've only seen one of these in my whole life, but what I remember is that he had a pistol that was an airsoft gun with that little orange nozzle unscrewed. And it scares me to death to think that you don't know what you're dealing with all those people. And so it was scary. What I remember,
it was a good indoctrination for you.
We're friends forever.
That's right.
That was a crazy night. I do know that, and am proud of local law enforcement, because it was you guys that essentially knew that things needed to be tamed down a bit. I'm proud of the fact that we got to kind of stand along local law enforcement. And we created a thing called SID Crew, which was a group of different churches. There was about 13 of them. In fact, Alex behind the camera over there, he was a part of that early crew. And we try to pass out cold water and that kind of thing, and encourage people. We talk about Jesus some too. Y'all came to some of our meetings, law enforcement, to help us be strategic. Was it an encouragement to law enforcement?
Absolutely. That was really a great thing. And I think that's when kind of the tide started to turn. You know, Sheriff McKeithen's efforts and our realization that things had to change. That this was not healthy for our community, and that things had to change, and that was dangerous. And then seeing the community coming on board, and really your efforts and the SID Crew was kind of the beginning of those efforts on the community becoming involved in this situation and standing up and saying, this is not the kind of community we want to live in, really gave us the ability to go out and take care of business. And then, you know, certainly eventually the city and county commissions and the businesses largely and citizens got on board with it. And I think we really made a change in our community. And you know, we realized that would come with some costs, potentially financial consequences. But I think that I think the change has financially, I think, has been a benefit in a very short period of time.
You know, just to that end, and then we'll kind of move on because there's so many positive things that have happened since. But I was in a meeting not too terribly long ago at the chamber with the Tourism Development Council's basically the director of it, and Dan Rowe was actually saying that this year was the best March that we've ever had. We're standing to look at the best June and July and summer that we've ever had, like historically ever, even back during the spring break days. And at a time that the rest of the state of Florida is down like 30%, which is way ahead of the rest of the country.
Sure.
Bay County's up 1%.
Right.
And I think most everybody in Bay County looks at it and sees that God's made provision. I'm thrilled that after the community made the decision that we did, we've all kind of just rallied together and we're moving the right direction.
I agree.
It thrills me for law enforcement, though, because a lot of those young guys, they didn't get many nights they got to sleep during that period of time.
It was a rough period. You know, the sacrifices that they made, and you know, both for their personal safety and that their families made, it touches me.
Yes, sir. You know, there've been a few things the last couple of years. We had a hurricane, had a pandemic.
We did.
Still,
in fact, I've commented that I don't really know how to be a normal sheriff in normal times. I think crisis management is what I've done for the last 5 years, and you know, hoping to experience some of just normal sheriffing.
You know, let me tell you a side story, because I watched a video that you did, and it's on. I think it's on the sheriff department's website about you and Miss Ford are both in it, but you're talking about the hurricane.
It's the Sheriff's Association.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
We'll probably have a link to that on here with a couple of these. And I think they need to make sure your Facebook page is there because there's some really cool things about the sheriff departments, the positive things they're doing there as well. Those were really tough times because of communications being down.
Absolutely.
Those of us that were here know that nobody really had phone options initially, and if they did, it was going to be AT&T.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, because we got a number of these deputies that, well, they're not deputies, some of them are officers these days, but they were having trouble talking. You mentioned that in the video, like hurricane happened,
mm-hmm.
y'all were running at the EOC, and how were you able to even communicate with your deputies? How did that work initially?
Well, it was very, very difficult, and that's what made, it was bad enough, the destruction caused by the Cat 5 hurricane hitting us, and the destruction to our community. But it was a very bad feeling emerging from our office while the winds were still 60, 70 miles an hour, and realizing I couldn't communicate to Tallahassee. I couldn't communicate with my own people for a period of time. And but everybody knew what their job was, and it was to keep the community safe and to serve the community. And they just went into action and just did an amazing job. And slowly that we regained those capabilities, and got a lot of help from other sheriff's offices and state agencies from around the state that came in and really I have worked over the past several years to build up our capabilities. One, to be self-sufficient should that befall us again, and I pray not. With ways to feed our people, have incident command setups. We even bought a bathroom trailer, things like that, and tents that we can put up for people to sleep in, or to have command tents and things like that. But I also have purchased those because I think we've got a great debt to pay other areas of the state when that type of tragedy befalls them, and so we've got a special team together to travel back and kind of pay it back for Bay County.
I think that's incredible. I know that one of the reasons I bring that up is I want our viewers, I want our listeners to realize the sacrifices that your guys made, that others in law enforcement made during that time. And I know you had an awful lot of guys and gals that lost their own home, that had their own damage, that their parents, their siblings that were adults and were out of their spaces. Mm-hmm. And so average Joe or Jill or whoever was trying to take care of whatever they could and salvage whatever they could. What was it like for the average sheriff's department employee? Were they given time off to get the rest of it figured out?
Well, not initially. I mean, we had over 60 deputies and their families that lost their homes during the storm. And still, what really touched me is that every day they came to work, and we were working 16, 20-hour days, and you're really kind of the first 2, 3, 4 days we're kind of self-sufficient, relying on our own resources while everybody is coming in to set up to help. So initially, there wasn't time to take care of our own homes, and it just really touched me, the sacrifices that they made, and it really had kind of an epiphany that my job really is more about taking care of them so they can take care of you. And we really tried to, we worked with the county and the TDC to find, hotels and condos on the beach for those deputies that didn't have a home to stay in, which was just a really great thing our community did, coming together to, a lot of people had to go stay out there, but the county and the TDC really stepped up to help provide us that. And we set up what we called Sheriff Mart. We sent 2 days out, I sent a tractor trailer up to the Dothan Walmart to get the type of supplies that any family would need, but a deputy's family wouldn't have time to go get those things. So we turned our finance section into almost like a mini Walmart, where they and their families could come in and get those things.
We have a family here at the church, I'm not going to name their names, but they live far enough north that they actually still had hot water and they had power. Mm-hmm. And my family was not here, but I was able to actually go to their home and get a hot shower. And I remember there being 3 or 4 officers and their families that came through the same night I was there to get a hot shower. Mm-hmm. It seemed like that they had work socks. Somebody provided them, and they should have. some clean socks.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was amazing to me to, like, those of us that lived through that time know how big a deal that was, because there was a sign in my neighborhood that said, "You loot, we shoot." I remembered one at my parents live over in the Premier Estates area off Baldwin, and they had a big sign that said "Looters taste like chicken," I think. And it was a hard time,
Very hard.
and there were people coming here from other places.
Mm-hmm.
And so not only did the community pull together, but we know that law enforcement had our back. And I just kind of want to say that I think that matters. Let me shift again, if I can.
Sure.
The pandemic, it has created some other issues. Many of like schools had to kind of shut down a bit. A lot of people didn't go to work. I'm pretty sure officers still had to go to work.
No working from home for the deputies.
No, you still had to interact
Not
with the
even for a
public.
day.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I know that created some challenges, and I'm bringing it up again to say we are so grateful that you guys have done that. I particularly want to. Is it okay to give kind of a shout out to? And I don't know if is it Major Anglin? Have I got that right? Rick Anglin is over the jail, the county jail.
Mm-hmm.
Those of you that may not know this in our area, our Bay County Sheriff's Department, that's not something that's farmed out. That is local county run jail. And what did they do during the pandemic? They got quite a few people over there.
They did an amazing job under Rick's leadership with the pandemic. It's certainly a situation that could have been a disaster at the jail due to the close living quarters. And we really, our population at the jail is very high. Even when you compare it to other counties our size or even larger. So that creates a very challenging situation when you introduce the coronavirus into that. But fortunately, and by God's blessing, we did not have any major outbreaks. I think that Major Anglin and his staff just did an amazing job by very early on setting up the disinfection protocols, masks, and very importantly, new inmates that were coming in from outside, kind of retooling the whole facility to provide a place where we could quarantine new inmates coming in for 14 days before they went into general population, strict screening of staff as they came in. Again, the deputies didn't work from home on Zoom, not one single day. And that just, for that, I'm grateful that we've got people in our community like our deputies that are willing to serve in that manner.
Yep. Well, we have been blessed as a community by that, no doubt about it. And I'm grateful for there's so many good things happening in the jail. In fact, before we move on from the jail, let me ask another. I'm trying to put these things in categories that might fit. In Bay County, we have some issues just overall periodically with alcohol. We have issues with drug abuse. You arrest people periodically relative to drug abuse, that kind of thing. There are some programs every day, right? Tell me about a couple of the things that are happening at the jail. Some programs that are beneficial, that are good things that are going on there.
Sure. So drug abuse in our community is an issue as it is nationwide, and our agency has always been very proactive in the drug enforcement, and that it's important that there's a force out there that's taking drugs off the street. So we've really, over the past several months particularly, have had some very large seizures of drugs where you're talking multiple pounds of methamphetamine. And just yesterday we announced 1.5 pounds of heroin with a fentanyl mixture, which is we've had 150 overdose deaths in Bay County since the beginning of this year in the last 6 months.
How many?
150, 15 of those being fatal. So it's a significant issue that affects people's, not just the person that's using the drugs, but their family, and then the community as a whole suffers because of it. And so enforcement is one part of it. It's very important. But we also have an opportunity at the jail that when we arrest somebody, we're already paying their room and board. So my philosophy on that is that we should be using that time for something productive. So we've got the Lifeline Drug Treatment Program, which is a specialized dorm at the jail. It's a Department of Children and Family licensed drug treatment program, where we provide a 12-step program to try to change their lives and gives them the tools necessary when they get out, that they can break that cycle of addiction and go on to lead productive lives. One of the programs that I'm really excited about is called the Mission-Based Resilience Program. It's within the Lifeline program, and it's was created by Dr. Ed Najar, who's a retired Navy SEAL commander, lives here in Panama City, just a great guy. We met him at the sheriff's office when he provided this training to our command staff and deputies to help us deal with the daily stresses of our job, where his program looks at your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual resilience in developing goals in those areas of your life, and then plans to meet those goals. And it's actually got a physical component, kind of a Navy SEAL kind of workout, and as well as workbooks where you're writing those goals down and ways you can accomplish those. We did it at the sheriff's office for our benefit, and then he and I talked as we were looking at the drug treatment issue, and I asked him if he'd like to try that inside the jail setting, and he's done that. I think we're on about our 10th session of that. It's about a 6-week session, and just been so pleased with the results. And Ed's heart for service with that's just amazing, and I think it's really worked to change some lives.
That's awesome. I also want to mention Rick McClung and the work they do with the Most Excellent Way program.
Great program.
I know they're not involved with a lot of the jail ministries, but it's obviously a faith-based program, and that's helpful as well. It's a cool thing to see that there are programs in place to help the ones you arrest not be back there again in 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just, we talked a little bit kind of off camera about the multi-generational aspects of it, and you want to do something so that people are getting into a different pattern of behavior, getting onto a purpose-filled life. Obviously, from our perspective, it'd be great to be a faith-based life as a part of that. Another thing that I think that is very important about Bay County is that we live in a community that's a relatively small community. I guess it's all about where you're from. Maybe St. Joe's a little bit smaller than Panama City, and Two Egg, smaller than St. Joe by far. But I know that whenever I go to Walmart here locally, I see people that I know. When I've lived in bigger cities, say Jacksonville or Fort Worth, I could spend a week and not ever see anybody I know. In law enforcement, one of the uniquenesses of where we are is that you have to love the whole family in this. And I did a little. I'm talking out loud with you because I think it's important. You may not really know where I'm going with some of it, but I asked somebody yesterday that about you, and they said, let me tell you something about Sheriff Ford. He's black and white as far as the law. Like it is what it is. But which I think is great. It all came out of the word integrity, and I said, okay, I know integrity means what happens when nobody's looking, right? But tell me why you said that. I've heard that word several times about you, and he said, while he's black and white on what the law is and the law is not, he always tries to find a way to express that with compassion, to still love the people. And the reason that I think that is
very nice.
It is nice, isn't it? I wanted to encourage you. I've heard some good things. You guys in your role don't get to hear that very often. Right. In fact, it's kind of funny because when I called you and said, "Hey, can you be on my podcast?" and you said, "What's it called?" It's a Good News Bay, and you're like, "They don't call me when good news happens." That's not. I don't ever get that call.
Share a lot of good news.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be here.
Well, I've listened over the years because I've tried to dig with you guys into some of these problems, the drug problems. I know that many of the kids in our community that get pulled out of homes because of drug problems. And so if we don't fix the drug problem, the kids they're going to end up in some of those same things.
Right.
And so when you look at all that, though, I hope it's okay to be so direct, but I've got friends that have done stupid things. People that I went to school with. I don't want to say I've got family that have done stupid things, but I think all of us have extended family or people that we know that have done things that messes things up. And there has to be consequences to some of that. When you live in a small town, the people that get arrested are people that we go to school with. They have wives, they have children. There's a lot of shrapnel that goes with all that, a lot of emotional pain. And I have listened I've listened to Rick talk about folks coming to see loved ones and the pain in the eyes of those children and the parents and the spouses. And it hurts him to want to know, what can I do to help make this right moving forward? And even you in the role of sheriff and the deputies trying to figure out, how do we make sure that the public is safe? How do we make sure that the law is applied? And now, how do we do this with people that we live with every day, that we go to Walmart with, that we do life with, that we're in government with, that we are in school with? And I'm saying that as a compliment, but it's not easy. And I know it's not easy. I mean, there's challenges with that, right?
But I think we can show compassion, and I think one way to do that is through some of the programs at the jail. I think I would love to see a situation where somebody goes through one of these programs, and we have it happen. We're not, you could study the success rates of it, but if it just helps a handful of people come out, lead productive lives, repair the relationships with their families, and break the generational curse of some of these situations, because I don't think there's any way that you can deny that sometimes that these problems carry on from generation to generation.
They
so
do.
It's very much in our best interest as a community to invest in programs that when people make a mistake and they're held accountable, that we do something to try to turn that around.
Speaking of investing early like that, in talks I've had with community leaders, I won't give you a specific program, but like something like Elevate Bay, which was a mentoring program in the schools. You have been very gracious in the past with employees at times to allow them to participate in mentoring. I don't know how much the details you're like in the middle of, but over the last several years, whenever somebody like Blythe Carpenter, who is principal, was at Cherry Street, now is at Jinx. Pre-pandemic, she'd give a call to the department, and they'd send officers over for things like Donuts with Dads or mentoring programs. And some of the things I've heard among community leaders, people like yourself, not quoting you directly, is that when you look at the dollars involved in what it takes for law enforcement, what it takes for court costs, what it takes for county dollars that are spent, the time invested early is going to save hundreds of thousands later. And I'm trying to compliment, but one of the positive things, if we're talking about Good News Bay, our local law enforcement officers are encouraged to be involved in a variety of different programs. Is that true?
Absolutely. That's one of our favorite things. We've got a community services division that Captain Steve Harbuck commands. It's part of our school resource deputy program, which I think is very critical for law enforcement, having a good relationship with the community, is to start that relationship early. We spend a lot of time in handpicking those deputies because they have to be so much. They have to, one, be prepared and ready to respond to, unfortunately, in our times of an active shooter were that to occur. But they also, it's much more than that. They're coaches, they're mentors, they're even friends to some of these kids. So I think that starts that relationship early, a positive relationship with law enforcement. But that same division also, we do some fun things in the community. We've had movie nights, different parts of the county. We'll do a big inflatable screen, and even at the mall one night around Christmas, we did a drive-in movie show there. And those are the kind of things that really kind of bring joy to the job, is to get to interact with the community like that, provide that type of resource. So food drives that we've done is, really, I think, met a need at the time with the early parts of the pandemic, and those are kind of what makes the job a little more fun, and being able to interact with the community at that level.
We had a backpack program here at the church, and as school got started back, we still had a lot of senior adults that were not our volunteers, that were not able to get out and do what they normally were. And so as the kids came back to school, still needed food, we provided food in quantity to several schools. And some of y'all's folks heard that we needed help kind of unloading some of that and getting the food distributed. And I think Casey Melton, if I can throw her name out, has been real instrumental with Lynn Phillips here, who's our financial secretary that's over some of that, particularly at Tommy Smith Elementary and Margaret K. Lewis. And to have partners at the department that had folks close enough by that they would be concerned, one, but two, step in alongside and help is cool. And I also want to, as a part of that, they had a bunch of Thanksgiving bags and stuff that they gave out through the sheriff's department, which is cool.
Casey's got a really, really great heart for service. She's my crime prevention deputy in the Southport area, and she saw a need. I started, I think, at Southport Elementary with some kids that she learned may not have a Thanksgiving dinner, so she started going to different businesses and trying to acquire food, and that has grown. I think we're in our second or third year of that, and that's grown to feed about 1,000 families at Thanksgiving.
I don't know that you've been able to do these since the pandemic, but another thing you did community-wise was for a couple of years, and I know some of our leadership attended at least 2 of them,
Mm-hmm.
but y'all did church security seminars.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had one planned, for the beginning of last year, and the pandemic messed that up for us. We actually had done a video of one of the first ones that we did that we provide to churches, but that was something that we did that under Sheriff McKeithen, and I really took a personal interest in that. At the time I was going to North Star Church and was kind of help get their security team started and writing the security plan. So we brought a group together of deputies that had worked in their own churches, as part of a security team, but also as law enforcement professionals, had different specialties. So we kind of just all sat down and came up with a program that covers, how do you write a security plan for your church? How do you put together the team? Medical emergencies. How do you handle the accountability of kids in the nursery, and even all the way up to handling a potential disruptive person or worse. So it's time to do that again. I think we're getting back to a point we can do that.
It's a real service to the community, and I'm grateful that you guys have certainly been willing to provide that. From time to time, senior adults get scammed, and there's more of those than ever.
Mm-hmm.
If there was someone concerned about that, I know I've got some listeners and some viewers that are in that category. I know you've got a white collar crimes division,
Mm-hmm.
but if they are concerned something is a scam, is there somebody that they could call to ask about that? Or the
We've got our
resources?
financial crimes unit, and we also have Paul Becker. Everybody knows Paul. He actually had retired, and then he came back as a victims advocate, which dealing with the elderly population. He speaks to a lot of groups on that, and we just see some really sad situations. And if you think that you can't be the victim of that, you're wrong.
Yes,
because you may not be the victim 10 times, but then that one time that they call where you happen to be at a certain situation in your life that whatever their scam is, whatever they're talking to you about really, hits home with you and scares you.
Yeah.
You can easily fall victim to these type of things. And the unfortunate part and the frustrating part for us, we're used to being able to, if somebody commits a crime, we're going to go out and find them and put them in jail.
Yeah.
The problems with some of these scams is through technology, they're able to mask their identity or even where they're calling from. So our best weapon in these type of cases is education of the public. And for people to, if you'll follow our Facebook page and then some of the news media stuff that we do, we try to tell people the different types of scams that are out there.
So when there's things coming out
so when
actively,
they come up, that they recognize
yeah.
them and they're able to just hang up the phone. That's the best weapon against these, is hanging up the phone. But any type of situation where somebody's representing to be an authority, whether they're saying, I'm a deputy and you have a warrant because you didn't show up for jury duty, or I'm with the IRS and you didn't pay your taxes, or your grandchild's been put in jail when you need bond money. At some point during these conversations, they will try to get, normally will not ask for your credit card. Sometimes they do that, but what they really prefer is the anonymity of having you go to Walmart or Walgreens and getting these prepaid cards, mm-hmm. paying cash for them and giving them the numbers off the back. We never, ever, ever are going to do that.
Okay.
IRS isn't. The sheriff's office isn't.
I bet you between now and when we publish this probably in about a week or so, I bet you we can get a link of some kind to a resource over at y'all's office that will give us some information and some tips on that, which would be cool. Mm-hmm. Another good news thing, there's a place you can find out the information about this kind of stuff, which is mm-hmm. good, because we don't want people taking advantage, and the pandemic hadn't stopped people from being criminals, right?
Yeah, one of the big ones is they call and say that you have a warrant. And we would never do that because it's just way too much fun showing up at the door to arrest somebody in person. So.
Hey, speaking about the fun and arresting somebody in person, can I pick on you for a second? I got to tell you this the other day. There was a picture of you. I think it was in the paper. I know it was on Facebook. And I love seeing my sheriff when he's got a person that's been not obeying the law. He's got him grabbed by the nape of the neck. You weren't smiling for the camera. You were taking care of business.
Right.
And I hope is it okay if we put that picture up there at some point? It's public. And I know that was all in jest, but
that's the fun part. That's why I got into this line of work. I'm sure you it wasn't to do budgets and deal with personnel issues. So when I get to go out and be with the guys, and especially on a serious situation like that, where we have all hands on deck, and sometimes I actually get in on a little of the action. So.
I was told I'm investigating you. I don't know if that's okay or not. You are known for being cool as a cucumber. Like, it's really hard to get you riled. I don't know, maybe some of those guys could tell me of an instance, but I had a couple of them tell me of times other people would have been riled, and you were like, hey, we're going to take our time right here. We've got no reason to be in a hurry. We're going to do this right. We're going to talk to them. They're going to talk to us. We're going to wait this out. We're not in a hurry. And I'm like, you know what? That's a good thing.
Maybe on the outside, I'll be bad at times, but on the inside,
you are human. At the end of the day,
yes,
you're
sir.
human.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's important, and there's some of the situations that we go to that, we do slow down, take a breath, and try to do things safely. And
this is it's no secret that I'm a preacher, and one of the reasons I feel so strongly as I do about law enforcement is I believe that Scripture is ultra clear, that God has put the authorities in place, and that it's by His hand and His provision. It's true of governing authorities, but law enforcement's part of that. And you've heard me read this verse before, but in Romans 13, it says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except from God. And those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. It says the rulers are not terror to good conduct, but to bad. And would you have no fear of the one who is in authority, then do what is good, and you will receive his approval. We've all had that feeling when we drive by the speed trap, right? And we slow down. But I will tell you that when I think I'm human, and that when I see a sheriff's car, mm-hmm. I'm going to hit the brake. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but I naturally do. Mm-hmm. I think that everybody ought to have a reverent fear of God mm-hmm. because of the authority that He has. And everybody ought to have a reverent fear of a parent. Mm-hmm. And they ought to have a reverent fear of law enforcement. One of your roles, when we talk about your guys, we want them to keep us safe. We want them to stand on the line at night and when we're not thinking about it and keep us safe. You and I have discussed how supported they feel by this community. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to keep their morale up sometimes, is it not?
It is. These have been, tough years for law enforcement. You look and see what's going on nationally and some of the rhetoric that's involved in that. And we look around and that doesn't represent me or the people that I work with, and it just gets to be very disheartening and confusing to us as well. And to be honest with you, a little scary when we start hearing some of that stuff. But this community is wonderful. There's no other place in this world that I'd rather be in law enforcement, or probably that I would be in law enforcement other than Bay County, because the citizens, they do support us, and we take that seriously. And when I talk to our people about that, we realize that we enjoy a good relationship with the community and enjoy their support, and realize that that's something that has to be nurtured, that could change it any day if we weren't doing our part and doing the right thing.
If these viewers and listeners are wondering what can they do, or is there anything they can do to encourage your folks or law enforcement, first responders in general? Are there little things they can do? Like if you see somebody in a restaurant that's in law enforcement, and are they used to having people just say stuff all the time?
Absolutely. It's a really special part of this job to it's a tough job, and we see things that most people don't see and have to do things that most people never have to do, and there's some sacrifices both for the deputies and their families. But to hear somebody say thank you for that, and hey, we saw this thing on the news the other night, what y'all had to go through, and we really appreciate what you do. That just don't, I would say to people, don't discount the very positive effect that has on a deputy or an officer, just a simple thank you or hey, we support you. It's important.
I also want to point out that I've seen over the years a very positive relationship with all facets of society, particular pastors, and pastors of all different types of demographics, and whether that's inner city or that's somewhere up in Fountain, or that is Lynn Haven or Panama City or the beaches. You guys seem to pride yourself on having a relationship with not just pastors but people in the community. Do you feel pretty good about your relationship with all the different parts of the community?
I do. I think we're very, very blessed. We've got some great people in the community. Our churches and pastors, we do strive for good relationships and open lines of communication. And again, we realize in our line of work that, the reason that is that we try to do the right thing, and that it's, one incident away from, changing that type of relationship, which we try to protect that by our integrity and our actions.
I've got so much fun stuff I want to talk about, some that's really serious. I know that one of the things you really wanted to be able to talk about and should is your desire to keep an eye on your guys, their mental well-being, their emotional well-being. Here recently, there have been a number of incidents with young children, but just a lot of difficult, tragic kind of things. Talk to me a minute about what happens when your officers deal with some of that stuff.
I don't think people realize the toll, both emotional, mental and emotional, and spiritual toll that some of the things that we have to see and incidents that we go to, the effect that it has on a deputy. And that's something that I'm proud that our profession is kind of waking up to and starting to realize and providing resources. I was talking with one of my majors the other night. We had a very tragic situation. I said, hey, we've got to watch out for our guys and make sure that if they need anything, we need to provide it. I said, I don't want them to be messed up like you and I. So it is something that we recognize. We have had several over the past month cases involving children, very tragic situations, and I worry about our folks that go to that. And we've got resources in place for them, an employee assistance program where they can call and receive counseling. But one of the ones that really kind of touches my heart is our critical incident stress management team, which is made up of deputies and officers and EMTs and firefighters from all the different agencies in Bay County that we've sent to training to be able to provide peer resources. And we've got different chat groups on our phone, and I'm a part of the one for what we call the SISM team. And as soon as they find out that there's been a traffic crash that a deputy's gone to, that a child has lost their life, or some other type of incident, I see them starting to talk. Okay, you need to reach out for this guy, and I'll reach out for that one, just to be a support mechanism there. We also have, we've recently instituted some programs for some incentives for physical fitness, and I think that's important. I think if you're taking care of your body, you're going to take care of your mind as well. So all those kind of things to help make a very difficult job have a little less impact.
I think all of those programs are incredible. I'd like to, if I can, I'm hopeful that some of your guys and gals are actually going to watch some of this, and I want to be able to just kind of look at the camera and speak into the mic and let you guys know how much we appreciate what you do and how much we affirm you here in Bay County. For whatever it's worth, having been born and raised in Panama City in the Bay County area, I don't think I know of another area that's any more supportive of law enforcement than we are, and any more thankful for the job that you guys have done, both during the pandemic and the hurricane and just in general. And whatever I know I'm going to be more aware now. I mean, I always try to be complimentary, but I really just didn't know if it really, did it really make their day if I said thank you?
It does make a difference. I promise you it does.
I got to let you go because you got other places you got to be. Your faith, you're a believer in Christ.
Yes, sir.
It has to help you be cool as a cucumber on the outside all the time. But has it sustained you over the years as you've gone through some difficult places?
I could not imagine doing this job. Even as I was a earlier in my career, without faith in God and praying for His wisdom every day. It's been just really a special relationship, even as I've had more responsibility thrust upon me, in these past few years, that it's really kind of a rock and a comfort.
I would imagine, too, as we've talked over the years and we've gotten to pray together at times, that the prayers of protection and knowing that there is a God that cares for your guys as you become, and gals as you are responsible for them, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Listen, it's been a real treat getting to have a conversation with you, and I'm thrilled that you're our sheriff and in our community.
We appreciate your support.
Thank you so very much for being with us today. Some good news about law enforcement in Bay County. Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you were encouraged by the good news, we would ask you to subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you will subscribe, all new content will come your way. You'll get notified of it, and it'll help us to brighten Bay County. Thanks, guys.